And welcome to the latest episode of the Sling'N podcast. I'm TJ.
And I'm Kent.
Yep, you guys guessed it. You guys have asked for it. So we have brought it to you, the cybersecurity episode. Kent, we've only been talking about doing this one for what? A little over a year now? Oh, Jesus. You said it.
It's been
Oh, God.
Booter jokes for tonight. Yeah, no, we have. I've been prompting TJ to bring out his expertise for a minute, being that y'all's are gun toting, shooting, pew pewing, concealed carrying, medical device having, all that good stuff. We figure it might make common sense to talk about some other aspects of security in your life. So, just like we don't credential firearms instructors, I let them do their own intros. Y'all may or may not know that my two buddies here, like my esteemed co-host and our newest hired producer, Mr. Frank, who 100% has committed to do 400 episodes from Hogan show. But these guys are both no shit legitimate cybersecurity professionals in their real life. Rather than doxing or ruining these guys or saying company names or whatever like that, I'm just gonna ask you both, and we'll start with Frank because he's the guest after all. Here a little bit later on, like what his credentials are in cybersecurity, so you guys have an understanding. But before we do that, let's just catch up. Mr. Frank, what have you been up to, buddy?
A little bit of everything and a whole lot of nothing. So a lot of work. Work's been keeping me pretty busy. That's about 85% of it. And then a little bit of playing around the house. Set up some pumpkins for festivities and some other neat stuff that I'm sure you guys are going to be seeing on the social media here in a little bit. So we'll see. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Cool, man. What about you, TJ?
I miss you too, man.
I miss
all
you.
the time, dude. Folks, I'm serious. Like, Kent and I used to talk every single day. Now I have to call him 18 times to get him to answer the phone. So
fucking ridiculous, dude. Wait, this is what happens when we're all successful.
Yeah, moderately successful, I think is a fair point. But no, man, I mean, doing work, man. So this, folks, the topic of discussion for tonight, this is essentially kind of what I do every day. So my 8 to 12 hour days behind the desk and behind this very computer that you guys see me, this is it. Like, cybersecurity is my gig. So going to be a good episode. I'm looking forward to it.
Very, very cool. So, let's first establish some parameters and stuff. TJ, give me your elevator pitch on your qualifications or your bona fides in cybersecurity. What is your job title in your daily world of work in the BP Boop space?
So
what do you
my
do?
formal title is a director of IT security. I won't go into the details of what industry I support specifically, but every day direct. What?
It's
Yeah, that'd be nice.
It's gun companies.
But my background, I've got a bachelor's of science in information system security. I've been in the industry professionally for a little over 7 years now. And before that, of course, with my time doing the DoD thing, I dabbled in the cyber realm just a little bit as well. So I hold a couple of different certifications. And prior to being promoted upwards in the chain to a director's position, I was the lead ethical hacker for the company that I work for. Really built that team out, and it was great.
Ethical hacker sounds a little self-explanatory, but you have a very specific that means something very specific to you. Why don't you explain what it means to the viewers?
So
and
ethical hacking, and I call it ethical hacking because every time I say penetration testing, everyone giggles. I rest my case. Yeah,
It's my
I rest
preferred
my
term.
case. Pen tester,
Pen
penetration
tester.
tester, ethical hacker. These are all essentially the exact same thing in the industry. We will vary the terms because of the childlike giggling and humor that we all have. But essentially, my job for a very long time was to break into the organizations that would contract with my company, and then report to them in detail how we did it, how far into their network we were able to get, what we were able to capture along the way, and then tell them how to fix it. I don't want to church it up too much, but it's kind of like hiring a professional safecracker or a reformed safecracker to test your bank vault. So,
Got it. So, you're performing a mystery shop of somebody's network.
To many respects, that's correct. There's a couple of different ways you can do it, and I won't get too down into the minutia, but yeah, that's oftentimes, and I would say that my preferred method is to know as little about the organization that I'm testing as possible.
You know, that would be something that folks potentially have a vulnerability that they don't realize, and you know what you know because of that.
Yeah, and just as a point too, the sad thing is in many cases, I'm exploiting vulnerabilities that sometimes those organizations do know about. So, and I can expand on that more later, because I know the initial reaction when people hear about that is shame on you, or shame on you, the company, right, that I'm working for knowing about this particular issue and not going and fixing it ahead of time. But there's a very intrinsic reasoning to perform the types of testing and evaluation that I do or have done in the past in order to help remediate that.
Okay. Very, very cool. Now on to Mr. Frank. For those of you that don't know, Frank from Apache Solutions is also Q. I can announce here this evening that Frank is Q.
From whatever.
He is in a basement somewhere in a pizza shop. It really is him. We have Q here tonight, or the real Edward Snowden. I can't tell. Frank, what is your background in IT security and cybersecurity? What is it that you do professionally in the IT field?
So mine's a little bit different than TJ's. So mine actually started off on the wrong side of the fence, or now on the good side of the fence, if you want to call it that. But my day job, my mortgage paying job, just IT manager, nothing special there. For the extra above and beyond stuff, a number of CompTIA certifications, Security Plus, etc. I've done a ton of training with offensive security, and again, specifically for that ethical hacking, for that white hat type stuff, if you will. I do a lot of contract jobs on the side, time dependent, for other businesses that know me, know of me, something like that. So it's not something I openly advertise, but I'll go around and do the same type of penetration testing, both for ethical hacking, if you want to call it, both off-site and on-site. So even go as far as and gaining entry, physical access, what the client wants, and what they're going to pay for. It's again what TJ was analyzing, seeing vulnerabilities, exploiting those vulnerabilities. And I'll be honest, this particular business has branch offices, and they want to make sure that they're locked down and secure and all this stuff that's been going on here lately. And they want to make sure that their employees, or their physical access is locked down. And more often than not, it's a real big eye opener when you come back with information and say, hey, here's what I found, and by the way, here's your personal information that I also found on your computer at the same time. So that's usually a big eye opener and a big, yeah, we're going to hire you again for next time. So yeah, it again, a lot of fun.
So I think we should parse out tonight's conversation into a couple of key areas and topics. TJ, I know you wanted to talk about cybersecurity for the kids. I think that's questions I'll be asking. Those of us that are likely to be fans of a Sling'N led podcast probably want to talk about some home and some personal security stuff. There a lot of us have things in our homes that we don't want people to access or necessarily or know about or access pictures or video of or whatever like that. I think for anybody that's worked hard to make what they want to keep it that way, and they don't want their credit report or their actual liquid assets in bank accounts being accessed. So I think we should talk about that. But first, and a few other things, but really first, I want to just kind of talk about current events and prove a point. Y'all, if Facebook can be hacked, I promise you can. True or false, expert people?
True, but well, I that's such a burning topic. We're gonna have to talk about that here in just a little bit.
Go get on it. What happened at Facebook?
So Facebook was even worse than a hack. So at Facebook they had some issues where they had an engineer or a team of engineers that sent out some configuration for their BGP. So the thing that separates the internet from us, right? The equipment that separates the internet from Facebook or from us from Facebook. And through that configuration change they had made, it broke their internal backbone. So nobody from the internet for about 6 hours, nobody from us peasants could access anything that's on Facebook's servers, because that broke, because that failure that had happened. And there's speculations ran just absolutely wild right after that had happened. As when people couldn't access. Oh, they were hacked, and because there's some people that took some 3 billion users' credentials, and we have all this information that's up for sale. Just kind of playing on it. So, the truth of what happened somewhere in the middle, but, that kind of failure at that point, that potentially can open all kinds of other windows and all kinds of other avenues, especially if you're in panic mode trying to fix stuff. It's easy to say, oh yeah, well, we just need to turn this on and this will fix our problem. And then later down the road, you go, oh, remember when we turned that thing on? Yeah, that thing is actually leading to other open ports, other open, access, other broken ways that people could potentially exploit, potentially get onto our network. So, it's kind of a testament of, knowing how everything interconnects and interworks. It's easy to just say, okay, well, you need to be safe on the internet. So we need to go through and illustrate what safe is. And then from there you go, okay, so what's that really mean? And have an intimate understanding of your network from the end user device, so the computer, whatever that is, all the way through how it interacts with APs for access points, how it interacts with wireless routers, how it interacts with switches, how it interacts with firewalls, and everything through the entire chain, all the way through ISPs and their nodes and how everything is interconnected, how everything works, all the way back to the other server. There are so many different places where potential vulnerabilities could be exploited, that it can cause a lot of grief, for us, the just wanting to sit in a coffee shop or whatever, do a little bit of work. It can cause a lot of problems if you're not aware, or if you're ignorant of kind of how things work and how everything's kind of
Book of Faces. What do you think happened?
Well,
It was you.
No. Yeah, I wish I was making that Facebook money. But No, I mean what Frank said is what we know to be at least the purported truth. Right?
Right.
And even if you did say, let's just even say that they were hypothetically attacked by a third party, nation state, China, Russia, pick somebody, right? You get into this tricky thing called attribution. And we used to have this kind of running joke inside, the pen test team, which was every time somebody would call us and say, "Oh my God, I think I'm being hacked. Can you tell me who's doing it?" We would say, "All right, let us break out the dice and we'll get back to you." And we legit had like what we called the attribution dice, where one side it was a nation state known to conduct hacking activities, and on the other side it was the mechanism in which they got in. So it was social engineering in China or Russia and botnet. We had all these different, because you can mask that activity. Yeah,
It was the butler
exactly.
in the parlor with the candle.
And the challenge is, though, it is so easy to mask that type of activity that being able to attribute that activity specifically and to a point of prosecution is incredibly difficult. I can change my IP address right now, and all of a sudden this stream is coming from China, Russia, India, Ukraine. You pick something, right? All I got to do is flip a button, and I can do it in a couple of seconds. I'm not going to do that because we're already having enough technical difficulties getting the stream running smoothly. But, it really is that simple. And that's what makes cybersecurity, that's what makes cyber warfare so challenging, right? You start talking about, an organization or a nation allegedly, right, quote unquote nation, allegedly attacking, the United States cyber infrastructure, and like that, them's fighting words, right? You could be potentially launching a complete cyber World War III based on whatever happens, right? Pick a number of disaster scenarios that could take place. How awkward would it be if you were in that position, knowing how easy it is to hide your true origins and then launch an attack against somebody, right? You now have to make a decision as a leader of a country to go to war against a nation that you can't confirm or deny was actually responsible for it. Plausible deniability in cyberspace is absolutely astronomical.
I mean, all I can picture is like the scene from GoldenEye where the pictures are beeping, booping together, and the computers are going like from Australia to the Philippines to the Americas, back to South America. It's like bing, 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 bing.
Yeah. As much as we give, guys like Frank and I, as much as we, cast shade on those types of scenes in movies, there's actually a little bit of truth to that type of a graphic, right? So you actually, and we're going to get way down the rabbit hole on this. I'm going to try not to lose anybody here, but there's this thing called proxy chaining, right? So, just as a micro example here, I attack and gain access to Frank's system. I then chain and proxy my attacks from Frank's system to your system, Kent, and I get into your system. To all intents and purposes, you see Frank attacking you. You don't, but on the,
but you're pulling the puppet strings. So Frank walks into the bar and swings a punch, exactly. But you're the one making him do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
All right.
Yeah, and the other side of that is something that can be just as devastating is going through and harvesting other devices, harvesting computers. So me attacking you in such a way that you don't know that you've been attacked, but I can now control your asset. I can control your device, so kind of like a botnet. So I'm able to send a command against this particular target, this particular computer. So now not only am I just working from one device, I'm working for literally
earlier
literally at the click of a button. So I mean, it's really really potentially scary stuff.
He sent me a thing to click on. I'm still regretting doing it, upstairs. I have no idea. Like, it just was like, later. I'm leaving.
No, that was that new feature update.
So
it does your laundry for you. If you just would have let it go, Sophie could have taken the night off.
oh, she gonna see this?
I'm just saying, maybe you should do more laundry? Question mark? Or we could just giggle. Pen tester, penetration.
Well, I mean, taking the conversation back real quick, so yeah, like, kind of as a joke, kind of as a, hey, check this thing out. I'd sent Ken a link. Well, from that link, he clicked on it, and all it showed was what? Just an image of a black screen that just said hi. It was a picture.
Right.
But him just clicking on that link gave me all the information I needed about the device he used, about what his address to in the World Wide Web was, and even down as far as I could tell him specifics about his device and what he needed to do on his specific device. So if I can do that just from one person clicking a single link, like what emails are you clicking on? Like, oh yeah, that coupon sounds like a great idea, or website. It opens up a whole nother avenue to potentially opening yourself up to malicious things. Again, potentially not everything on the internet's malicious, but it makes it to where something that seems simple can really turn into something that's really complex.
Okay, so the illustratable point to me, so you can call Facebook's thing a hack. You can call it an engineer fucked up. You can call it a whatever. From the perspective of the layman, Facebook is the beepiest, boopiest, IT-iest, most advanced, smartest company in the universe. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're just a bunch of kids with some pictures and whatever, and maybe it's not that complex after all. What it illustrates to me is if professional billion-dollar IT-based industries can have failure points, what in the hell can I possibly do to keep a failure point from happening in my own life or my own little business or my own whatever? I mean, if Facebook can't figure it out, what the fuck hope do I have?
That's a great point. I want to get to that real quick. Let's level set with everybody here that might be watching or listening to this, on their podcast player or whatever have you. This is what really concerned me about that Facebook whistleblower thing, that whole situation. This is what really bothered me with that. If you listen to the 60-minute interview with the whistleblower, and they alluded to it in the congressional testimony to the subcommittee this afternoon. I watched all 3 hours of it. Yep. They openly said, and they did testing where they would create a profile and they would go like a handful of things. Fox News, Trump for president website, pick some political affiliation for conservatism. Without any other activity. No posts, no actively seeking out, no search history, no pictures, and no demographic data associated with this account that was set up. Facebook's algorithm would then curate more extremist activity to that account, and that account was being introduced to QAnon, right-wing conspiracy theorists, all Alex Jones, lizard people, all that shit. Right? That is probably the...
Yeah, you're just doing my top 10. Like, that's my jam. Well, that's what I jam
Yeah,
out
but
to
see, that's what's scary about it is if you look at it, and we could probably draw some parallels to the Counterinsurgency Field Manual, FM3-24, that talks about civil unrest and destabilization of, certain groups, grassroots movements, whatever you want to call it, but a disgruntled civilian populace. Think about how many riots, how many protests were fueled because somebody saw something on Facebook that pissed them off. That may or may not have actually been true. So this is probably the first step to safety on the internet, and that is proper conduct and rational thought within oneself. If you are seeing something on the internet, somebody wanted you to see that. Now, if we rewind to social media circa 2010, chances are that somebody that wanted you to see that was an actual associate, a friend, a colleague, somebody that you have intentionally connected with. Right? Hey, Kent sends TJ, hey, TJ, check out this thing on QAnon, whatever it might be, right? You know, Hubcap Lovers Anonymous, I don't know. But I saw that because Kent wanted me to see it. Not because I followed Kent, and I like, country music, that all of a sudden I'm susceptible to seeing this right-wing extremist stuff, or bias curated video that would fuel my anger, that would A, cause me to interact with that post, and B, potentially take action.
Yeah. So you've used right-wing as the example. Does the same thing happen on the other side?
The scientific approach to it would say yes. You can't have one without the other. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction, right? So if we look at the polar opposite of that, how many people went and followed and liked and supported Planned Parenthood and, Biden, Harris, or whatever, and then was curated explicit videos of, call it police violence or police brutality, to further fuel that narrative and the sentiment of anti-police activity and belief, or defund the police type stuff, although nobody that they actually know has actually been assaulted or a victim of police brutality, allegedly, right? Hey, look what happened to Johnny or Jane. Hey, friends and family, let's come together. I know these people. I got this video, right? It's nobody. So, like the meme, nobody. Absolutely nobody. Police are killing everybody that's an unarmed minority. So that, I wanted to just make sure we put that into perspective, because yes, while Facebook could have been hacked, whatever, that is something, but that is what I pulled out of all of that testimony in that interview, and that part actually scared the crap out of me. Now, to your point, Kent, part of my job also involves me going into the dark web, the dark net, the deep web. We typically call it the dark web because it kind of combines the two, right? So the dark net, the deep web, for those that don't know, are the shady back alleys, or the dimly lit back alleys of the internet, where you typically associate with like the Silk Road, which is where weapons trafficking, human trafficking, drugs, and narcotics.
Yeah, it's where most of the internet
arguably is where most of the internet is. Everything that you typically see, like if you go to Google or that Facebook or whatever, that is all considered clear net. So that's what you typically interact with every day. When I go on these sites and I'm looking for clients' data, every single time I have seen data that belongs to a client on those resources, it has been because of a third-party compromise. That username, that password, that document was retrieved and posted to those resources because LinkedIn got compromised, or Adobe got compromised, or Apollo got compromised. There's all these different breaches that you hear about in the news. Those are typically where that information comes. So if your credit card data, Kent, if it ends up on the dark web, it's probably not because somebody hacked into Kent's computer. They probably hacked a third party that is holding, PayPal, Venmo, whatever. Pick an organization, your bank even. They're not typically going after individuals. You're not a big enough payoff as an individual.
Interesting point. So let's make sure we don't pass folks by in the dust here.
Got my running shoes on, buddy. We're going to do this.
Yeah, I know. So when we talk about company on us, the slaughter on this, because all of us, arguably, maybe not you two, I really don't know. I maybe Frank and TJ aren't even your real names for all the fuck I know. You sons of bitches will disappear some goddamn day. But man, Apple and Google and Facebook and Twitter and Skype and Weebly and any number of these huge multi-million, multi-billion dollar these internet companies have data on all of us. All of us. So you gotta kind of wonder. It makes the other thing about the Facebook thing is what bothers me is like, wait a minute. These guys have 1 million pictures of my kids. They have location tracking data on me. They have financial data on me. They have numerous streams of conversations that I've had with friends and people and associates long since past. I mean, you can go into your Facebook Messenger and read a Facebook message thread from your girlfriend in 2007 if you want to. That whole thread is still there. Like, you can go find it. They have all this stuff on you. And they can't even keep their own shit straight. They can't even keep their own house in order to the point where something doesn't go crazy on them. Is there any real hope for the average individual that at some point your stuff's not going to be compromised? Or are we all just playing a waiting game?
So there's different ways of looking at it, right? So the point of you not becoming compromised, that is going to play directly into how much you're putting out there. Like if you mitigate how much information you're putting on Facebook and, Faceplant, MySpace, whatever, right? Insert your other company here. Then if there's no data there for them to, get a hold of, then there's nothing you're going to do. Nothing that they can do with that. But I mean, that's just social engineering. The other piece of that is, think about your utilities, think about other businesses that, you may use a credit card for, something like that. Like they have to capture that data somehow. Those are the other businesses that we hear about, especially in the industry for my mortgage paying job. It's we have a service that we are selling to a customer, right? So we capture some of that information for that, to pay for that service. Well, that type of information, if it's not properly secured and properly taken care of, hypothetically, if that business were compromised, then that's the same information that, can be used elsewhere. So it's not just social media. Social media is a big piece of it. I mean, there's a lot of social engineering that goes involved in that. And that's, figuring out passwords, all other kind of things like that. But spamming you, phishing you, trying to get you to voluntarily release information. But, on the other side of that is there are other things that you can do to help mitigate the risk, right? So there are certain things that you can do that it just takes a moment of thought. And once it becomes like regular habit, like it's not that cumbersome to do. But, speaking generally, like the average everyday Joe, if you don't think about this type of stuff, putting it through the lens of, what kind of information, what kind of data am I putting out there? It can really be, it can be detrimental. Prime example, every now and again, I'll go on a trip, whether it's for training, whether it's for personal, whatever it is, family vacation, insert your reason here. And, those that I'm associated with and those that are around our trip, we're not going to post anything about while we're gone, while I'm gone, whatever it may be, until I get back, until I'm inside the house. It's just it's a way of mitigating some risk, a way of mitigating some, chance of, somebody, saying, oh, cool, open house, let me go do what I want to do, that kind of thing. Again, there's still risk involved because now I'm saying, hey, Facebook, hey, whatever, insert your big tech company here. Here's more information. Here's more data that potentially could be social engineered against me. But regardless of that fact, there's just little steps, little things that you can do along the way that I'm sure, we're going to get into talking about here in a little bit as far as what we can do to help mitigate some of this risk. The risk isn't going to disappear, right? It's always going to be here. It's something that we just have to understand that, it's here and it's going to stay. But we just have to understand what, as individuals, and what we can do, what we can do for our spouses, et cetera, what we can do for our loved ones to help them how to mitigate and teach them these best practices for moving forward, for, interacting with other people on the internet, for, interacting with other businesses, for paid services or whatever it is. There's things that you can do, again, that's not going to stop, anything from happening. Anything can happen, but it's just going to help mitigate or reduce your risk of having, a compromise.
All right. So then I'm gonna use me, because here I am. We don't have to come up with a hypothetical example, because I'm a real person and we can talk about me. Hi, I'm Kent. I'm the host of the Sling'N led podcast. I've put 88 episodes full of potential life information out there about myself. I have a YouTube channel. I market myself as a firearms trainer. My business information is all public because it needs to be, because I'm serving the general public. When I take a trip, the entire goddamn world knows I'm going out of town to train for firearm stuff, because, well, I'm trying to get them to come with me to do the damn thing, right? I really feel vulnerable in this area because of the fact that I'm attempting to market on the internet and time coexist and live. So I kind of feel like the dam's already open in a lot of
it absolutely does.
That make sense?
Let's be clear about something, right? And the things that Frank and I are here to help educate our viewers and listeners on is, just because you are security conscious does not mean you have to completely cut yourself off from the world. You can have both, right? So, Kent, I think you're a perfect example, right? Somebody who is broadcasting, to Frank's point, when you're going to be traveling, what your schedule looks like, where you're going to be, the fact that the house may not be empty. Security, just like with regard to a physical aspect of it, the same thing happens in the digital aspect of it with regard to having security in layers, right? We can't stop the guy or girl from breaking into your house to steal your television. You can't guarantee that won't happen when you're home, right? So,
right.
And the studies have even shown that there's a high probability that somebody will try to break in during the middle of the day, because that's presumably when everyone's at work, right? More broad daylight break-ins happen. Right. So using that as our analogy here, I'm sure you have taken steps to make sure that if in fact that does occur and you're not home, that the activity will be detected, or will be actively recorded or documented, and you'll be able to take steps, maybe alerting law enforcement to respond to the house, fire, whatever the case might be. These are the things that you have to take into account. And if I could put anybody's mind at ease, and I know that sounds really messed up with what I'm about to say, don't approach it as if you're going to get compromised, if you're going to get hacked, if it's when.
Right, it's when.
If you treat it as an inevitability, then you will put yourself in the right mindset to take proactive measures to layer your security approach to make sure that we're mitigating and minimizing damage.
Yeah. I mean, that also covers, just redundancy and backups, right? So being able to recover. So for me, I mean, I have a ton of family pictures. I have stuff that is near and dear to my heart that, if it were to just disappear one day, I would be very upset. Way to make sure that information is not accessible from any sort of, let's just say it's a ransomware attack, right? At least I know that this particular set of information is not only being housed on my computer, it's being kept somewhere somewhere else that's safe, that I know, comes short of a meteor hitting the earth, I'm okay. I still have, this information, whatever it is, pick family pictures, you name it, whatever kind of digital, stuff I want to maintain.
Define the term air gap, please.
So air gap is, you have a device or something, you have some sort of media that's not actively hooked up to a network, so it's not readily accessible. So for example, I have a flash drive, right? I stick flash drive in computer. I can copy stuff to flash drive. Well, if I remove that flash drive and I go put that flash drive in a vault, that flash drive is air gapped. I have no way of readily accessing the information that's on that flash drive. Air gap's going to be used more for like interconnected devices, computers, and local area storage arrays and stuff like that, network attached storage arrays. But just some way of being able to maintain whatever data that you want to, like I said, maintain or have not readily accessed. A lot of companies will use some sort of air gap system for their backup scheme. So you have, or even home gamers. So you back up a certain set of information, we'll say to like an external hard drive or something, and then you'll rotate that out, all of your data on one particular device. It's kind of backed up, and while one's physically plugged up, attached to your device, another one is, you're not going to lose all of your information.
Imagine for a second if you could take your money that's in the bank that essentially exists in ones and zeros, digitally, and you could make a physical copy of it and then stick it in your vault at home. So in the event that your bank account ever got eradicated, you could then take that physical device, the stand-in.
Oh, you mean like the gold that we're supposed to have?
But that's essentially what the recovery looks like. If your bank got wiped out and that $5.16 was eradicated from your $11.99.
It's
okay, fair.
$11.99, motherfucker.
When did you get it? Wait, we're getting paid for this now? But no, I mean,
dude, I got a big old fat check in the mail, so I don't know what you're talking about. You're behind the ball, TJ.
You get the idea, right? That's essentially what air gap is. It's not connected. It's offline. Maybe not readily accessible, like Frank said, but it is a backup strategy. And I mean, frankly, no pun intended, Frank. But frankly, one of the things that I always recommend, like birth certificates, driver's licenses, titles to your house, like there's a list of important documents that you have. If you can digitize them, if you have to scan them in, take pictures with your phone, high quality, most camera phones nowadays are pretty high quality images. Get a scan of that information or of that document and slap it on a thumb drive. That is now your filing cabinet. Right? There's nothing wrong with doing that. Titles to your vehicles, all of that. Anything that's an important document, you should be backing up and keeping stock of. And I think it's especially important for young people too, because one of the things that is probably the biggest challenge that we face in this arena is fostering a positive, security-minded culture. Right? And we see that even in the IT industry. Like Frank and I deal with network admins and CIOs and CTOs, all these big brains in the industry. And one of the biggest challenges they face as far as like users setting weak passwords or falling for social engineering campaigns or anything like that is largely because they haven't started or formed a foundation for a very good and strong security conscious culture within their organization. So, and you can start that at home.
Absolutely.
Right? Hey, Johnny. Hey, Jane. Let's not post pictures, Frank, to your point. Let's not post pictures of our trip while we're on it. No one cares while we're having fun. Let's enjoy the moment. Let's take pictures. But you can, when we get home, post it on social media all you want. Right? Do it after the fact.
Yep. Yeah, and to add to the point you're talking about, starting that culture, starting at home and then really pushing it back to the business. Coming from the business world specifically, man, it is very difficult. User who's been the same user since the 90s. You need to do things this way. You can't click on every sort of link, and then kind of watch how that unfolds, and try and do some training and try and figure stuff out. But then we have the exact same issue with the younger generation, where you use like a filing cabinet. There's a lot of people, especially younger generation, that don't understand how what files, folders, and cabinets are. So that hierarchy, it means nothing to them. All they see is, oh, I can put this on here, and you see a desktop with a million things that's exploded onto it. So the whole storage array thing, where in years past we actually had to understand what the hierarchy was and what that folder path was. Now that's going away. And, and I'll be honest, I'm having difficulty, especially with the younger generation, teaching and showing, okay, well, proper file organization and how to maintain that in a logical sense, for, continuity of data, for, being able to archive, be able to come back. Some users that for some stuff that I have to maintain do exactly that. They're like, oh yeah, I just dropped on my desktop when they got 40 million files that's on their desktop, and there's no rhyme or reason of what is put where, because they just have the search function. They can easily find whatever they want just by doing a simple search for it. So it's a challenge. It's hard to try and manage that on both ends, on both the generation of the yesteryear versus the current generation up. But again, going right back to what TJ said, start them young, start them in the house, start them to where they understand that. I think one of the points, Kent, that you had talked about, not bring this up, is how do you start doing that? How do you start doing that in the home? What kind of procedures, what kind of policies can you put on your home network to protect our youth from being exploited, or to protect our youth from being points of vulnerability within our family? And how do you manage that as they grow older and older and older and become young adults? Okay. So because there's going to be a steep graph of how much data that they're going to be regularly accessing, and what kind of data that they're accessing. It all changes.
So let's talk about the kids obviously are a touchy subject for all of us, but in what ways are our children at risk online? What are people doing to, what kind of things are people exploiting with children online? What am I fighting?
I want you to think of every heinous thing that exists in the world. Everything from kidnapping, murder, the list goes on, right? Pick anything that could horribly happen physically to a child. And while the lack of physical damage might not be present in cyberspace, the mental, emotional, and psychological trauma that can come along with that certainly can. They can be exposed to a lot of the ugly stuff that adults know to exist and probably have seen in their lives at some point. Generally by happenstance, right? A graphic scene from driving to work and you saw a car that was on fire and there were people trapped inside, right? Or, somebody getting violently beaten in a Walmart parking lot. These are things that are being curated and delivered to our kids that they have access to on a regular basis by going on the internet. The extreme case of that would be the kidnapping aspect of it. Insert www.whitevanwithnowindows.com, right? There are people, that's how human trafficking is largely facilitated by the internet. They get kidnapped somewhere. Right. Hey, if you meet me at the playground at this time, I'll give you a bike, or I'll let you see my puppy. People have been kidnapped that way. As a matter of fact, if we go a little bit higher, there's a large portion of teenagers, more explicitly teenagers, of course, going to be children under the age of 13, 14 years old, probably are going to be a little bit more carefully watched by their parents. But teenagers that you hear going missing all the time, chances are they ran off with somebody that they met on the internet that they think is their boyfriend or girlfriend.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it just gets darker from there. There's just all kinds of really messed up, garbage that happens, especially, again, not on the ClearNet necessarily, but, on the backside of all of that, on the bottom of the internet iceberg, if you will, to where there's some pretty rough stuff that happens as a result of, some of these kidnappings. I'm talking like live stream type stuff. Just rough stuff. So, being aware of what's out there and understanding, the importance of safety and the importance of teaching our kids of man, you can't talk to strangers in real life. You understand that that person that's on the other side of that phone or tablet or whatever it may be is also a stranger. So back to TJ's point, that teenagers type thing, if they're younger kids, you can help mitigate that. Hopefully have a more watchful eye. But man, anything can happen.
And we've actually started.
It really can.
I've got a tween in the house, right? And he has a smartphone. Does he have social media? Absolutely not. I refuse it. As a matter of fact, if I had my way, I'd delete all my social media as well. But then I wouldn't get to hang out with you people all the time. So, but we've established rules in this house. He is not allowed to friend any. So there's certain games that he plays, and he actually plays them with his mother as well. So just kind of like their little bonding thing. They get together and they play with certain phone apps and stuff together. But one of the particular games that they both play is a community-based game, and they're able to friend people and exchange digital gifts, and just kind of it helps them level up their character and stuff. He's not allowed to befriend anybody that he doesn't know. And I have parental control set up to where every time he associates with a new person on that game, I get an email every single day. If I don't get an email during the day, then I get a roll-up every week of all the friends that he has made or that he is associated with. And I ask him, hey, who is this? Who is that? Oh, that's Johnny or Jane. Okay, how do you know them? Oh, well, I don't. Delete them now. Period. If you want to lose your phone, go ahead. Play games. Mess around and find out.
So,
and he doesn't fight me, by the way. He's not. He knows better. But no, I mean that's the way that conversation can go, right?
So, playing devil's advocate, leave it to hacker daddy to figure out how to control the phone that well, right? Like, how can your average person control it?
It's even easier than that.
There's often settings. Frank, I'll apologize for saying it, but look, I didn't crack a magic code to do this. I didn't program my own widget. I didn't make my own app. Before I signed him up for that game and allowed him to register, which I registered him, right? It explicitly said, "Do you want to set up? Is this for a child? Like, is there a children's profile? Is this a children's profile? Who is the adult in the house?" And like, I will say this to largely to the credit of a lot of these app developers and a lot of these other companies, they have intentionally started putting in a lot of really good controls for parents, but it's on the parents to actually go seek out this information.
Right. So this is the proverbial. The school district now put up all the information about Johnny's classes and Johnny's homework and Johnny's grades on the internet, but you still got to be enough of a parent to go check.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, in some instances, so in that particular instance, so for me in my home, I have control over like the router and router settings. So I can go and say, okay, I'm going to allow, any device that's on my network access to these particular sites, or I'm going to block these particular sites. So I could go through and kind of mitigate risk. It's not going to stop everything, but I can help, remove some of the maybe more vulgar stuff off of my network, not just from, my kids, but from myself also. But there's a lot of routers that are out there that, and again, the router's the piece that comes in after your modem. So it's towards the internet. But there's a lot of way that before it even leaves your network or comes into your network, that you can help mitigate or block some of that stuff. So, for example, there's some Linksys routers now that are popular that have like I think they call it the family circle or something like that, where you can have an app that's on your phone as a parent, and you can do things like go through and restrict how much device time device has, like one of your child's device, or what kind of information that particular device can have access to. And that just at a glance, you can see, oh, well, Johnny has been on the internet for upgrades or whatever it is. I mean, you have a way of being able to mitigate and manage that. At the same time, you're able to help mitigate and manage, the and some of them maybe more, mischievous type things that can, that they potentially could be exposed to. There's a lot of, again, horrific stuff that I don't necessarily want my 2-year-old being to be able to see. Doesn't mean I can stop it all, but I can help. I put steps in place to help mitigate, that from happening. Same thing with.
I think so. We're all over the place, and it's great information. But let's summarize. I think a good first step, aside from being an active parent and paying attention to what your kids are doing on the internet, is number one, getting the control yourself. And how do we do that? The easiest way to do that is to go out and buy your own wireless router. Do not accept the router that comes from your internet service provider. The reason for that is because when you take the router from your internet service provider, you do not get admin access by default. You either have to request it, and that's if they'll even give it to you, but you have to request it first. But chances are they won't even give it to you, because if you get in there and mess with things and it breaks your internet, whatever have you. However, you can take any router, just about any modern router, and plug it into your modem, which is the big box that actually connects to your cable or fiber optic input, and plug that into your router, and then you get to control your wireless signal. You get to control the gateway. And a lot of these modern ones, so I actually have two wireless routers set up in my house. For my general home stuff, I've actually got a Google Home device, or a Google Nest, whatever you call it. I think it's the Google Nest. I can't keep them all straight. There's so many different ones out there. But this one came with the main base station router and a repeater. So I've got one that sits up in my dining room, so I have a strong wireless signal throughout the whole house. I can set up individual profiles that, like, all my kids' electronics lose internet at bedtime. I can get that granular with it. And there's even advanced protections like, are these kids' devices? Yes, they will automatically filter out a lot of, not all, but a lot of that malicious content that Frank and I have talked about.
Yep.
Okay. What do I need admin access for on a router besides parental controls? What else am I doing with a router?
Anything that comes inside or outside of your network, that router or that firewall, that device is going to help mitigate the traffic between both sides. So it'll help. It's your first line of defense from the from the internet. Let me take that back. Your brain's your first line of defense, from the internet, understanding and seeing everything, but your first physical line of defense, if you will. So if you were to just take a computer, go, okay, modem coming directly out, no protections, no nothing, plug it in the computer, within 12 minutes, man, it's going to, no antivirus, nothing. Within 12 minutes, it's going to have something on that computer, on that device. Yeah. I mean, it happens that fast. There's all kinds of botnets and all kinds of stuff that's out there.
And by the way, there are studies that back up exactly what Frank is saying. There are people that will put intentional, like they will launch just some dummy website, put it on the internet, and they will track how fast it gets attacked with something. And it's literally within minutes, if not less.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And then from there, from there, so once you have that router, that firewall that's in place, you can go through and you can dictate what you want to be able to either see, or you can go through and dictate what you don't want to see. You can go as far as, on some of the more advanced ones, blocking specific countries. So like on my home game router, I have a blacklist of countries that I know that there are servers in those countries, or there's access in those countries I don't want to have anything to do with, right? So I can, again, that's not a, there are ways around that, but it's a way of simply mitigating some of that risk. Simply just trying to say, okay, I don't want this type of information. I don't want this to be, potentially doing scans or whatever it may be on my particular network. And then from there, you can start going into like content filtering. Okay, so in my home, as an example, we don't have any kind of pornography or anything like that comes inside of this building, right? This is our little safe haven. So that particular thing is mitigated, right?
There's some made in the building.
Well, that's a different story, right? That kind of stuff's not on any kind of digital format that you will ever know of. But being able to mitigate that risk, right? Mitigate that, whatever that is, inside of this home, and you can go as granular as you want with that, as far as blocking specific sites or whatever. But again, that's just mitigation. It's not a way of stopping it altogether, but it's just a way of being able to slow down the introduction to it or whatever.
You get more granular control with that admin access.
Yeah.
So what about all my things? The phones and the laptops and the tablets and the iPhones and the.
So there's a couple different things that we can look at. So once you upgrade that wireless router, you need to make, or let's say it is wireless router. Let's just say that you go out and you buy whatever the latest greatest wireless router that's out there. There's some things that you need to set up. When you take the device out of the box, you open it up, it has this generic, SSID, generic Wi-Fi name, right? It has a generic password. It also is going to have a WPS pin, another code that's on the bottom of them. You're going to want to disable that WPS crap. Apartment 2A, don't label it something, right? Change it up.
Mine says FBI surveillance van.
There we go, right? That's perfect. And then you also want to change like that default password to something other than password or 123 ABC, whatever. Just change it up to something, and make sure that it's at least WPA2 or WPA3 as far as the encryption, the password encryption. There's different standards, right? And those standards, wireless internet's going to be a do not enter sign anyway, but those standards are continually evolving. Like the last standard, WPA3, it was introduced in 2018. It's still not widely accepted yet, but we're working towards it. We're moving towards it now. Standard, it introduces new things can or cannot do with each standard. So for example, the WEP or WPA, those were really the introductory. Those were the first ones. It was quite literally a do not enter sign, in front of your network. But somebody with very limited experience and like 2 minutes of Googling can go, oh, cool, I understand how that works. Let me now have your password to the internet. I was one of those guys. Like I was right there. This was like early 2000s, late 90s. And then moving up from that, you can, there's more encryption technology. There's more stuff that helps obscure that password, and it helps with other stuff that we won't get into that. But from there, the next thing that you need to be able to understand after you take that wireless box, after you set all that up, is that every single one of your devices, they're talking to the internet, or connected devices. They're talking to the internet. They're talking to other devices inside the home. There are things that you need to shut down to help, again, mitigate that risk. UPnP, I mean, that's a big one that a lot of people just go, oh, yeah, I want all my stuff to be able to talk to the internet easily. Let's go ahead and just turn that on. No, you don't need it.
What is it?
It's UPnP. What's the right name for it? It's it's so that your device can communicate to other
it's
easily
essentially
other
what we call
devices.
client isolation. So you can if you log onto that device, if you're sitting on your phone on your Wi-Fi network, your phone can not only talk to the internet through your Wi-Fi, but it can also talk to all the other devices on your network. Anyone who and yeah,
Right. It's synthetic. Don't I want them to all be able to work together?
Universal plug and play. That's what it was. Universal plug and play. I had universal pwn and play stuck in my head, and I know that wasn't right.
well, I mean, frankly, there's no reason to now. You can do it,
Right.
You know, and again, to one of our original points, you know, the likelihood of somebody parked outside your house or within range of your Wi-Fi router, short of it being frank, breaking into your Wi-Fi network is probably slim to none. But if someone comes in from the internet and gets into one of your systems, you don't want them to be able to see that.
Yeah.
With things like the cloud, like, dude, I share documents with my wife, AirDrop, iCloud, all that other stuff. I don't need my phone to see her phone or my tablet to see her computer on the same wireless network in order to do that. So it's a nice to have, but if you want to be security conscious, you don't need it. And it's one of those trade-offs where
and
it's not going to really negatively affect your overall functionality. Like, right. So on the last episode of this podcast, we talked about if you really want to be secure, unplug everything from the internet, shut it down, and never use it. So, but there's that trade-off, right?
Right.
We need to trim the fat on the things we don't actually need to make securing what we do have a little bit easier.
Okay. So no letting the devices talk to each other. What's next? What else do I do?
make sure everything's
regular updates are good, but I wanted to make sure too that we mentioned passwords. Strong, complex passwords. Personally, I recommend to not only all of my clients, but to everybody that I meet, passphrases. In most cases,
yep, I agree.
You are not really all that restricted on what your password can be as far as length. There will be a minimum requirement, like it must be 8 characters, whatever have you. Fine. But length, like overall length, is not really restricted. Within reason. I think Microsoft just recently updated theirs to 120 some odd characters. It used to be 60 something. But think of a personal sentence about yourself. Kent, what was the year, make, model, and color of your first vehicle?
It was 1999. It was a blue Ford.
Yeah, now you can't use that.
Right. That's also not
but
true.
You get the idea, right? So your password is write it out as a proper sentence with capitalization and punctuation. My first car was a 1999 blue Honda Civic with spaces. Right. Sorry, I'm getting attacked by a pterodactyl in here. But that becomes your password. It's a phrase, but it's a password. It's incredibly long, makes use of all character sets, so your capital letters, lowercase, special characters, which is made up by the space bar, a number, so the year of your vehicle, make it 1999 or 99, whatever, and a period, right? Plenty long enough. The ability to guess that is freaking impossible, generally. At least guess that with association to your exact username. And 2, cracking the password. Right. So we talked about earlier, most of your usernames and passwords are getting compromised by third-party breaches, right? So if you log into LinkedIn with, Kent Hauer at greenmountaindefense.com, and your password is whatever, that password is stored in what's called a hashed value. It's an encrypted mechanism so that your password is not sitting there in plain text, God willing. Supposed to be.
Supposed to be.
What happens is, these accounts get compromised and they end up on the darknet, and then they get sold or bought, whatever. You could easily make the argument, oh well, but it's an encrypted password. It's a bunch of random numbers and characters and stuff. There's no way they don't know my password. Wrong. That's when you get into what's called password cracking or decoding, if you will, right, for the layman.
Right.
And there are a lot of ways that can be done for very, very low money, if not free. The longer the password, so this is where the passphrase part comes around full circle, right? The longer and more complex the password, the more difficult it is to crack.
And I take that just one step further. So for me, I'll utilize every technology I have available to you, right? So multi-factor authentication is another really big one that I'm an absolute fan of. Putting physical barriers in place, such as a little Wobby key, something that you can. It's a physical device. It's something you have to physically plug into your computer, whatever it may be, in order to gain access to it, or have it to where it needs to take a fingerprint. For those running Windows, right? You have Windows Hello. It's hashed both on the physical chip of the computer as well as part of that physical verification. Using your face or using some sort of biometric something, right? Something other than just that password. So it's you have to have both sources of authentication. You have to use both a physical device like a phone or in addition to the password, and using that to help mitigate access to a device or access to an online account, especially. I mean, that absolutely it's worth the hassle. It really is.
What about using the strong password? Like, use
that
the
actually
Apple
is. I
recommended
use that a
strong
lot. Those are
password
actually
for this
those
one.
recommended passwords that they store on your keychain are really, really good. And truth be told, and Frank and I will go back. We will probably draw blood over this conversation one day. But that is one of the reasons that I use Mac OS. Is one, Apple's security is incredible. You can get there with other platforms, but it requires a little additional work on your part. Right? But Apple is already... look, you show me a company that'll give the FBI the finger to help them unlock a phone, even from a shooter. Okay. I'm listening. Right? Because, again, that speaks to the security-conscious culture. They didn't do that because they didn't want to help the FBI. They did that because they didn't want the government to have a backdoor into everybody's iPhone across the globe. Right? So, though...
Yeah, they'll just make them themselves.
Right. But, I mean, either way, that recommended keychain strong password from your iPhone is actually those are pretty good passwords. And that actually, Kent, that brings me to my next question, or the next topic. With regard to passwords, and by the way, absolutely seconded on Frank's, he's over here, Frank's topic about multi-factor authentication. If you are using a resource that allows you to use it, implement it. There are some that don't, and that's fine. Maybe do business with somebody else, but Google Authenticator, all these other different MFA technologies that are at your disposal for free, right? You'd be a fool not to use it. Your bank, hey, every time I log into my bank account, they text me a one-time use code. So username, password, PIN, blood sample, mother's maiden name, and the name of my first dog when I was 15. Oh, and by the way, we're still going to text you this code to let you get in, right?
Yeah.
But a password manager, right? We're telling people to come up with these incredibly long passwords. Don't use the same password for every single thing you log into. So that's where a password manager comes into play. So like the iPhone key or the iCloud keychain, whatever you call it, the keychain 1Pass, which I personally use. I like 1Password.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. What about protecting my online traffic?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. VPN. Absolutely. Yeah. So utilizing a virtual private network, something that, again, it's just to help mitigate, right? But some way of obfuscating the traffic between you and an endpoint of some sort. So
that was the most Carolina way to say obfuscate I've ever heard.
Yeah, whatever.
You want to try that again?
Going through and like putting up to where, Mr. Website doesn't know what my particular IP address is. That's going to help, again, just mitigate some of the information that they're taking from me, unwillingly in most cases. But again, on the same side on that VPN, you know, while it's super beneficial, while it really helps, keeping people, keep from prying eyes, being able to see exactly, what you're doing and how it's doing. There, if you pick a good VPN, there's not going to be any kind of logging as far as what you're looking up and what you're accessing. Your ISP can still see that stuff, but the
Internet
Why,
service
what? Can
provider.
still see that stuff?
Which, by
internet
the
service
way, there
provider.
are ways to
Sorry.
mitigate that as well.
Very, very true. But
DNS
by
leakage.
going about
DNS leakage. Sorry.
Again,
Too much text.
leakage.
Sorry, Kent.
But going through and really, like, again, just using that virtual private network to help, again, just mitigate and move things around. The nice thing about that is, especially about a VPN, is being able to open yourself up to other places of the internet that you might not regularly have access. So, like, if you want to, let's say that you're in a geolocked country or something like that, like you're in China and you want to watch something that's here in America, but the Chinese communists, they block this, right? They block watching Seinfeld or whatever it is. Then you can use a VPN to make it look like you're actually sitting in New York City, right? To go and watch your Seinfeld episode. It completely bypasses a lot of these blocks, generally speaking, to access and gain access to the information that you want. Now, the reverse is also true. So what these endpoints see, what these websites see, is, oh, somebody's in New York seeing, watching our whatever on whatever generic device that my VPN pushes forward when it changes a lot of this header data and a lot of this information. But on my end, what I'm going to experience, what my end user experience is going to be, it's going to be one of two things. It's going to be seamless. I'm not going to notice anything. Depends on how quick your VPN is, who your provider is, how fast their server is, and how quickly it's communicating to you. Or it's going to be laggy as all get out. And I've experienced both ends. I've experienced where I'm trying to look up something and it's just an annoyance, so I turn it off, or I go, okay, let me hop to a different server. Let me try something different. It's still like, okay, forget this. So it's one of those things where you have to have a little bit of self-control and know, this is good for me. I need to keep this on. I need to find an alternative. I need to do something a little bit different. So I've had people experience both sides of that, and they've complained about the speed. Because it is. Think about it. Instead of me driving directly to your house, Cat, it's just like me going to TJ's house first and then going to your house. So all you see is going from TJ's house to your house. You don't see that I started at my house
Or
first.
imagine he's in this busted ass van or bus that may or may not make it to your house in one piece. So he wraps it in vinyl wrap to make it look like a reliable Honda Civic from 1999. And then he makes it to your house.
So that's something I'm glad you brought up, because I didn't know this. So like these ExpressVPN or any of these other companies, do I need faster inbound internet to my house to make these work?
Yeah, and
not necessarily, no.
No, it doesn't. The reality of the situation is, it doesn't matter how strong your internet is. If you're going through a VPN server, your connection to wherever it is your destination might be, your bank, Netflix, whatever, is going to be reliant upon the network speed, or what we call the throat, the bandwidth at that server. So,
right.
Oh, great! So I'm relying on some Russian mouse to run faster. Oh, see this. I was all ready to do
you're
a
doing
VPN,
it securely,
and you've just talked me.
Is the point? So now I will say this: there's a lot of organizations, like, let's say some of the more sensitive stuff, right? Your bank, your medical records, stuff like that. There is a lot of encryption that is going on those endpoints, so that while the connection isn't necessarily protected, like, people would be able to theoretically see you logging into mylocalhospital.com or Netflix or bankofamerica.com or whatever. There is a lot of encryption that happens at that endpoint. The challenge, though, is if your credentials, your username and password, are being transmitted between your keyboard and that website along that connection. That's where things get tricky.
Right. And really, you've probably heard it, it's not very popular anymore. It used to be, but those man-in-the-middle attacks. So literally be aware of what, public sources of internet you're actually using. So like, I have heard hotspot.
I have heard of.
and looking for those connections to those big targets, right? So you got your banks and things like that information. And then what you want to do is you want to be that intermediary, right? So you as an attacker want to be the guy that you attack to, or be the guy that they connect to. And then from there, you can see all the traffic, everything that goes through, because you're the guy that's literally, you're the man in the middle. You're the guy that's in the middle that's receiving all this traffic and broadcasting. The end user doesn't see anything. So again, being safety conscious enough to where, I'm not going to use Starbucks open Wi-Fi to access my information, right? Or I'm not going to use, hey, look, free hotspot, free wireless internet.com, whatever. I'm not going to connect to it and then go check my banking information. I mean, you're just opening yourself up for
if you want to get on,
again,
if you want
it's
to
not
get
very
on
popular,
and,
but it still happens.
Do research for a college paper or whatever, but more power to you. Just be smart. If I'm out in the, if I'm going to walk out in public, I'm going to make sure I have my clothes on. I'm going to save getting naked for when I'm, in the confines of my own house. Right. So just, be smart.
Okay. What are the largest vulnerabilities that most people don't realize? Like where's our stuff getting compromised that we don't realize it's happening?
Yep. Social engineering.
Okay. Define that for me and talk me through it.
So all the stuff that you post online, your web presence, it's all visible from any job. So let's face it, a lot of us use, let's say a generic email, right? Many of us have just one email, right? There's exceptions. And then we use that email everywhere, right? So that most likely could be my username for something. Now for my password, a lot of people use like their kids' names, right? Or they use like the kid's name and their birthday or something like that. Well, man, that's a 2-minute Google search of going, okay, let's look up this person. Awesome. Let's look up more information about this person. Okay, cool. I see they have kids. Let me see if their password is some variant of their name and their birth date, and more than likely they're going to get in. So, like minimizing the information that you put out on the web is going to help, again, mitigate some of that risk. But the other side about that is, be aware and know who you're talking to, right? We hear the old adage of the Nigerian prince or whatever. Oh, I've won $1 million. I need to transfer it to, man, it would be funny if it didn't actually happen.
Yeah,
but it happens all the time.
I'm going to plug a couple other YouTube channels here. But Jim Browning is a big one. I actually think he operates his YouTube channel as Jim Browning, but it's a lot of scam the scammer stuff.
Yeah.
These guys. These call centers in India generally are they're buying websites, and it's typically with a misspelled URL. So instead of Ford.com, it'll be F0RD. Somebody mistypes it, or Forb with a B, and they'll put the D backwards and make it a B, right? You mistype Ford.com, and you go, now all of a sudden your screen locks up. An alarm goes off, and there's a sound effect on your computer. You don't know what the hell's going on. It says to unlock, your computer has been hacked. To unlock it, call this number, and you call the number, and then they take you through this whole script of, oh, okay, well, we can fix this for you. Here, install this file, give us remote access. And by the way, for us to go unlock this, we need you to go buy $1,500 in gift cards from Walmart gift cards.
Walmart gift cards. Yeah.
There are, especially the elderly, that have given away tens of thousands of dollars. In some cases, their whole all of their money to these scammers. And one of the things I like about Jim Brownie's channel is he will go through and just completely decimates these people. Like, he will get hacked on purpose with a virtual machine that he has set up to sacrifice. And you can learn so much from this. But yeah, if you got an email from somebody that you don't know and you weren't expecting, delete it and then purge your trash bin. Don't click.
If you got a link from a friend, right, and that you weren't expecting a link from, don't click on it.
Yeah, like Kent, if you send me a link, like if it comes in email, usually if you text me, I'm not going to question all that much. But like if I get it in email and I'm like, hey dude, did you mean to send this to me? I might text you right away, right? Hey, did you mean to send this to me? Right now I don't have to worry so much because I'm not too worried about Kent hacking my stuff. But at the same time, he's going to go on like this research tirade after this podcast.
What
if you are Q?
What if I'm Q?
Hey, Kent, I got a job for you, buddy.
Oh,
but yeah. Oh, this is going to get weird. But yeah, it's like, if you don't know who it's coming, it's just like junk mail, right? Just like you'd get in your regular mailbox. If you weren't expecting it, either call the person that you know, if that is an address from somebody, from an associate or whatever. Just shoot them a message, give them a call. Hey, did you mean to send this to me? Oh yeah, it was a cool news article. I thought you'd want to see it. Blah blah blah. If not, delete that shit. Or you could be a little, you could. I mean, hey, TJ, here's this link for this new firearms drill I'm working on implementing it into my classes. It's on greenmountaindefense.com. Here's the link, right? I'm going to manually type in greenmountaindefense.com and I'm going to navigate to where that stuff is. I'm not going to click the link.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Because you can make the link look like anything you want.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that is you don't trust every email that comes into you either, because I can make it look like anything I want you to believe it.
Side note, if you want to have fun with people, shadyurl.com. You can take any link. Yeah. So like greenmountaindefense.com, put it in shady URL and it'll be like how to build a pipe bomb. or
right.
Decorating your white panel windowless van. Like it's but it randomly generates these things. It's kind of like a URL shortener, but it makes them incredibly obscure and just odd to see in an email. So you can have fun with people with that.
Oh, I mean, what's a lot of fun?
Question here.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. From Zach, does opening an email do anything, or do I have to click the link for it to hurt me?
It depends.
So I hate hearing that. I open all the emails because.
It depends. So, like, on certain devices that have a be opened on your device, right? Whether you've like physically touched it or not, your device has already downloaded that picture.
Right.
So a while back, there was an Apple vulnerability. If a certain link, right? Same thing with text messages. All you had to do was receive it, and you're already screwed. Not just Apple's, they're all devices that happens. That was just the latest one that I can jab at Apple for.
There's far more for Android than there are for Apple. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, okay. And then you also, there's more Android users for a reason. But you also have like your Outlook or what is it, Thunderbird? You have the other mail clients. And those mail clients have settings that are set up in them to allow ease of use, right? So you don't want to go through and manually click on, okay, now open this picture, download this picture, do this. So, there's settings that are there that automatically open the pictures, that automatically open links, that automatically do this stuff. Again, it's a convenience thing, but it opens to susceptibility. Same thing with those links, with clicking on links inside those emails. It may look like it's going to something. It may look like it's coming from a particular person that you were expecting an email from. Doesn't mean it was actually from that person. It's the link that was actually meant for you to click on. There's just so many other things that that can happen. There's so many different things that you have to be aware of before just going and blindly following that email.
Well, so real quick, just to put things into perspective. My team of pen testers, right? We will intentionally not start a job with social engineering. We will do it, but we never start with it.
Right.
Because it's that easy. We have come across networks that have been completely hardened, are arguably impenetrable. But every single one of those that we have come across where we just keep hitting a brick wall, if we shift gears and go to social engineering, we have a 99.97% success rate with social engineering. Yeah, that is absolutely a real number because I had to look the metrics up today. And just to put things into further perspective, of that damn near not 100% success rate, I have a minimum of 22% people respond to my social engineering attacks. So if I send that link to 100 people, I guarantee you 22 people in your organization are going to click it and give me their password.
Yep. And so that's one of the reasons, as on the other side of not being a guy that's testing the network, but being a guy that's administering the network, I do this in-house. And the ones that fail this test, if you will, the ones that click on this link, whether it was a mistake or not, they have to go through, it's part of the T's and C's that it's set up. They have to go through mandatory training. It's a dumb little webinar thing that they have to sit through to know, okay, I don't want to do this contact support before I go and through and click on a link. So it's just a way to try and help encourage good business practice. Again, for us home gamers, for the ones that are doing, just call, like, or text or in the first place. So just mitigate the risks the best that you can. I think that was a great question, Zach.
Very, very cool. So we're we've only literally covered a couple megabytes of the terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of information. And get confused.
Petaflops. Does that Kent? Are you saying there will be an episode 2?
I think there has to be, right? Because I mean, I have so many questions, and I mean, we could sit here till midnight. I personally can't, but holy smokes! So, the last thing I would say is that, from the perspective of a business owner, what legal liability do you have to make sure that your shit's on lockdown, right?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, so I think we have to. So this is where we start getting a little bit deeper into the weeds, right? So from a business owner's perspective, you have to really look at what kind of data you're transmitting, or what kind of data you're housing, right? So, Kent, you obviously take payment for some of your services, right? So you have a duty and obligation to, at least at a bare minimum, exercise due diligence to ensure that payment card information, or PCI, is adequately protected. Now, you, being a small business, right, you have the ability to offload some of that liability to your third party. If your bank handles it, PayPal, whatever, these are essentially fiduciary or financial organizations that actually house, transmit, and deal with that data. So the onus and obligation to the liability is on them. But for a larger company, somebody that might have a storefront, that information, it's going through your point of sale, your register. you've got to make sure that you're protecting that data, at least implementing the appropriate controls to make sure that that data is adequately protected. Here's a fun fact. Organizations, especially larger ones that house that data or transmit and handle that data themselves, are required by law to have a penetration test performed on what is called the cardholder data environment, or the CDE. It's outlined in the Sarbanes-Oxley PCI DSS standards. So this is what must be tested with an actual no holds barred penetration test is every system that transmits, stores, or receives that data, or systems that are connected to those systems, must be included in the test every single year. So like, I guarantee you, let's just say for sake of argument, you do all of your business through PayPal. PayPal is obligated by law to get a cardholder data environment, or a PCI penetration test done on their systems every single year. And a stipulation to that is, and this is really the only stipulation other than what must be included in scope, is nobody that is directly responsible for those systems may be allowed to participate in the active testing.
Correct.
That's the fun part of my job, folks. I get to read shit like Sarbanes-Oxley and PCI DSS standards.
Well, and here's the crazy...
You're fucking talking 20 steps above people's heads right now. I have no idea what that is.
Yeah. Well, we'll continue that conversation off air, but the big thing is there's just so much out there. There's just so much. There are no shit laws. There's no shit like vulnerabilities, things that as a business owner, not even a business owner, let's just call it just an average everyday Joe, right? I think the last episode you had joked about, man, I'd love to check out the dark web. I'd love to see what happens on there. No, man, there are some definite like things that will straight up get you jail time, just for accidentally stumbling across a particular website, or accidentally stumbling across some sort of problem. So there's a lot of stuff that the internet's a scary place. I mean, there's just so much that's out there, and there's just, you don't know what you don't know, and that's kind of that's the thing that interests people, and that's the thing that scares people.
I think we can kind of start winding down on this point to bring it down a few levels from a business owner's perspective, right? Arguably, regardless of the size of your business, right, small, medium, large, whatever, reputational damage is probably one of the biggest risks that somebody like you, or similar, even large. Hell, this is a problem Walmart has, right? And that is making sure that your website is adequately secured. Because while somebody might not break in and get all your cardholder information and all the student lists and all that other stuff, what could easily be done, though, is if you make a website with an ill repute website development company, is if it's poorly coded and they crack into your website. Imagine if somebody logged into greenmountaindefense.com after this show and it was plastered with swastikas. Right? Like, yeah. But yeah, like that's some of the stuff that a lot of people don't think about. That's when you start getting into non-tangible or non-quantifiable damages, and those typically involve around a business's reputation.
Right.
How do we, TJ, keep the swastikas away?
I will do my best.
Okay, because I don't like those. That's not a good idea.
Think about it. That's something that could happen. Arguably, given the nature of the business, right? Green Mountain Defense, I wouldn't put it past an anti-gunner at all to start logging into some of these, your website, gun websites or whatever, and trying to manipulate the code to just, all they got to do is plant a picture. There's one little picture, just like I've got images for your logo up in your screen, my logo in my screen. I've got essentially a logo for greenmountaindefense.com/affiliate-links over Frank. something that
On
simple,
my face.
right? A little JPEG, little PNG file uploaded to the right portion of your website, and you've got questions, or you're going to have questions to answer. Now,
Yeah,
Kent's not going to sleep tonight.
Yeah, so my goal for tonight was to talk for an hour and a half, for you guys to tell me all the stuff I should do. I go do it, and I feel great.
So Kent, do you
now
still want to be a beat booper?
You know what? So when you piss me off, I get all like, well, fuck you, I'm gonna figure this out. So if nothing else, maybe my fire got lit a little bit on some stuff. So there for sure is that. I just cannot, I literally cannot wrap my head around the vastness of the scope of what the potential is. I think that's my biggest problem. Like, anybody, anywhere can decide to fuck with it and go ahead and do it.
See, that's where we come into play, right? And here's the really trippy thing. 99% of what Frank and I know is freely available on the internet. Like, the hacker sphere, hackers don't like to pay for shit, right? Those tools, those applications, now that makes things a little bit more intimidating from, a potential victim's mentality, right? Like, oh my God, these guys can go do this with $30 in parts from Amazon and a few, pieces of code they download from the internet for free. But that same information on how to use those things and how to defend against them is also available. And it's just knowing where to start. And I would say, don't let it, and this goes for everybody, don't let what Frank and I are telling you make it worse or make it seem like it's an insurmountable or unmanageable task. Just like with the way Kent presents firearms instruction to new shooters, right? You got to take it one step at a time.
Yep. Right. No, I'm really, the other thing I'm really being able to, I'm grasping the parallels between the two and how easy it would be to draw a mental parallel and to approach them the same way. I mean, that's certainly. So
I would turn this around on you, Kent. Before you go down that path, and this is the same advice that I give to major corporations and all that stuff that are clients of mine. They say, "Hey, dude, we've got 10,000 systems. 1,000 of those are servers. We've got all this stuff. We've got this huge network in front of us. Where do we start?" I'm going to tell you the same thing I tell them. What's your most valuable asset?
Yep.
Right? You start from the most important and work your way backwards. Right? And that's actually called a business impact analysis. That's one of the first things that any proper incident response plan should take into account. Right? If your biggest asset from a physical perspective is your house or your family, right? Okay, how do we protect the house? Well, we want to make sure we've got fire, an alarm system, and security cameras. Solid locks on the door. Okay, cool. That's done. What's next? Okay, physical, accidents that might happen. All right, medical, right? Then you start implementing the remediations and patching the vulnerabilities that might happen there. If somebody gets a cut, stop the bleed, right? Somebody starts choking, get a dechoker. Like, you just take it one chunk at a time, but you have to reasonably quantify and qualify what those assets are and how important they are to you with regard to the level of damage that they would inflict if attacked.
Yeah. That's a really great point. So I'm gonna move to wrap this up, and I'm gonna ask you dudes just a couple quick questions, and we'll get out of here. What's a good resource that somebody can go run down and learn more about this stuff? Where should somebody resource and start?
Frank, I'll let you go first.
The one place that now everyone goes to is Google. There's just an absolute ton of other places that just doing a simple Google search of, what are ways to, help with my cybersecurity? What are ways of being able to go through, the, we
Hold on,
kind of touched on.
let me stop you. I have a silly but honest to God question.
Yeah.
Does Googling how not to get hacked invite hackers?
It depends on the website.
Is that kind of like one of those things where like you don't want to open the Ouija board because you're afraid the demons will come in, so you just keep it in a box and don't do it?
No, I mean, just like doing anything that you look up on the internet, look for like genuine sites. Look for sites that have that secure socket layer, that HTTPS. Look for sites that have some sort of reputation, right? Some sort of good reputation. But going beyond that, like really start slow. Talk about some of the stuff that we had already talked about. Having that good home network. Figuring that out, figuring what that looks like for you. That password security is such a huge one. That's what the piece that's just so many people just don't, they take for granted. And then just go down the rabbit hole from there. Just go, okay, I got this. I have my routine. I have my way I'm going to be managing this. This is, how it needs to be done. This is safe. This is, secure. Then move on to the next piece and just tackle it one tiny baby step at a time. Just like we do on the range. We don't just go all guns blazing. We start, okay, this is how we pick up the firearm. This is what safety means. This is what, just really define it and really go from there. Man, there really is. There's just a ton of information that's out there. The different type of like threat post and different type of, cybersecurity forums. Once you kind of get an idea of how to balance, your network and how to balance your equipment, really going through and seeing, okay, now that I know that I feel like I'm relatively secure, let me see what else is out there that I may potentially have that potentially could be vulnerable, right? And try and mitigate, trying to stay up on those updates and just reading ahead and understanding that, there's stuff that's out there. I mean, hell, it was just, what was it, last week or maybe it was the week before, there were more zero-day attacks on the Chrome browser. Like, there's just so much that happens. There's just so much that gets pushed out on a regular basis that the average everyday Joe may not necessarily know about. But articles like that, information like that could help educate yourself and then take you down a rabbit hole of, oh, I didn't know that. Let me find out more information about this thing, which is my browser, the thing that I use every single day when I'm accessing, the internet or whatever it may be. There's a lot of better tips and tricks that honestly we should probably do a whole episode just on the tips and tricks of what's that. It would literally take an entire episode of what does that look like for an average everyday person. What does it look like to have good passwords? What does that process look like of surfing the web safely? What does that look like? And really go step by step and illustrate that really. And let's pull it up on screen. Let's show it. So I mean, I think that's something that should come in the near future.
Awesome, man.
No,
what about
honestly,
you? What's a good resource?
I was going to go the same route, but I think your sub question or secondary question is one that certainly is worth answering a little bit more, right? There's nothing wrong with we could list a bunch of websites. Frank mentioned Threat Post, Dark Reading. You could go to CISA. You could go to US CERT. United States CERT, Computer Emergency Response Team. There's a bunch of different like government and big business entities. Like there's every year Verizon publishes an annual breach report chronicling everything that took place over the last year. I read it every single year. Fantastic document. But for what we're trying to accomplish here, just keep it simple. Google top 10 tips to keep my kids safe on the internet. Look for known positive resources. Google has pages about this stuff, right? Yeah. Look at reputation scores. Like, you're going to know a legitimate site when you see it. And if you don't know, fine. If you see something like threatpost.com, Google threatpost.com. What is threatpost.com? And there you will be able to answer and educate yourself on what each of those things are and become smarter about it, right? But yeah, Google is your best friend. Like, and this is probably one of the biggest misnomer with guys like Frank and myself. you guys all hear that we're IT guys. Kent likes to say we're beep boopers, which I love that term, by the way. It's really grown on me over the last couple of years. But we are not experts in all things that have keyboards and monitors and mice. We know how to look things up about those things. Your best cybersecurity professional doesn't have all the answers. They know how to ask the right questions. So this is stuff that we do all day long, man. That's one of the things, like anybody interested in getting into this industry, you better get really comfortable with learning, because there is not a day goes by that I don't learn something new.
100%. Yep. I'll be completely honest. When we kind of opened up the podcast, you're talking about what credentials, what kind of background you have, stuff like that. Man, honestly, if I could just sum it all up, it's going to be because Google. There's this powerful search engine, that you have access to. There's just this collective information, this collective knowledge of all the other IT nerds that are out in the world that decide to put something on the internet. You can go through very quickly and be like, how the hell does this work? Oh, that's how this works, and just go from there. And then you just keep adding back to it and adding back to it. So, it's just, it's never ending. Exactly what TJ had said, man. You just got to get comfortable with learning. You never stop. You're constantly going, how the hell does this work? Oh, I should have known that. And you move on.
Interesting. Very cool. All right, guys. Well, why don't we end out on some kind of recommended reading? TJ, what was that book that you were flashing on the screen last week?
There's a textbook, some 1,000 pages. Good God. No, not 1,000. It's 620 something. But this is Extreme Privacy, What It Takes to Disappear, the 3rd edition, published in 2021 for this particular version. It's $40 right now on Amazon, $50. But it's written by a guy named Michael Bazzell, Bazzell. Frank was nice enough to bring it up on screen, but it is on Amazon, and it is only available in physical copy. But I will say this, books like this, if I could pick my camera up and show you guys my bookshelf, I've got just about every physical text that I had in college. Like, reference material like this is vital. Like, I'm not going to read this cover to cover. And that is one of the benefits of cybersecurity, as a profession. You're not expected to shove this whole book into your head. Get comfortable with going back, referencing things, taking notes. Post-it notes inside the chapters are really helpful. But yeah, this is a great book, I think. It goes a little bit beyond even just cybersecurity footprints as well.
Very, very cool. All right. Well, I think we've my head hurts. Y'all broke me. I told these dudes to dumb it down, and he's like, "Yeah, the Swarovski Skakaski fucking."
It's hard, especially when you get two of us together. We kind of feed off of it.
Oh my God, I'm over here trying to Google it. I'm like, I cannot spell Sakadoki fucking theorem. I don't know what y'all said.
I can't say a Fusuke, so there's that.
You're putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable.
My goodness. It's hard to keep up with you guys. It just proves how goddamn smart you both are.
I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express.
There you go. So, the web reputation score of www.greenmountaindefense.com/affiliate-links happens to be pretty good. It's in the mid 80s. I just looked it up. I looked up Green Mountain Defense, and the only thing it said was low popularity, which is all your fault, you listeners. Go click on the goddamn thing so it says higher popularity. So that's the big thing it got me with on the web reputation score. But some bright cloud lookup online was able to tell me that I ran a firearms training website. It literally, it knew what I was about. Pretty interesting stuff. My who is thing worked good because it doesn't say my name on the damn thing, so that worked.
Mm-hmm. And there's ways around that too, which are covered. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, greenmountaindefense.com/affiliate-links. go do the thing, go spend the money. We're trying to beef this thing up and be a little more 21st century modern, which means we need some money. No, this isn't a charity. We are people that do work for a living. So please, if you're going to buy gun stuff anyway, go and do that. Announcements coming up regarding t-shirts and stuff. Stay tuned. But for now, TJ's got the Teespring links there that you can go and buy the t-shirts. Every time I see Tim Kelly on the internet, he's rocking out on his gray Run Your Gun, Not Your Mouth t-shirt because he likes me. So that's very nice of him. Really, really, really appreciate that. Support our sponsors, Primary Arms. Go there, buy the gun stuff. Click the affiliate link. Do the thing. We'd really appreciate that. And I got to be honest, I'd love if you come train with me. So greenmountaindefense.com/training is where you can find about all my training stuff. Come take private lessons. Classes being posted all the time. New and big things happening. Frank, we appreciate your participation and your input tonight. Seeing as you're not going to plug your IT business on here because you don't type the word hacker into a computer without more hackers showing up. It's a Ouija board after all. You work for a gun training company, don't you? Or something kind of stuff?
Sure do. Apache Solutions LLC. So we got ApacheNC.com. I got a bunch of classes, private training, do the whole 9 yards. I got some really awesome dudes coming down from Ohio and from Virginia here in the next few weeks. So we got Gun Sets going to come teach there.
Phil's coming down too.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And Phil, Pennsylvania. That's right. Phil, I think that's actually coming down and teaching his. Costs, all the stuff like that. We'd love to.
Well, you got any last words before we get out of here?
Nope, folks. Real simple. Kent mentioned it. We do have some big announcements coming with the t-shirt stuff. As it stands right now, the t-shirts for sale on Teespring are going to charitable organizations. We've got some great ones out there. Once again, it's the last quarter of the year. So come the end of this year, we're going to cash out whatever we've earned, and we're going to make sure that those respective charities get the appropriate proceeds from the sale of those particular designs, which are mostly inspired by the guests of the show. I could tell you who they all are, but personally, I'd rather see you guys go back and watch the episodes that were hosting those individuals so we can get some traffic out of the deal and some interactions. But Second Amendment Foundation, Voice of the Martyrs, Hold My Guns.
I'm sorry to be laughing. Hold on. I'm laughing during charity shit. I'm sorry. Zach's thing from earlier is a great idea for one of these charity t-shirts. Will you make us a pipe bombs and swastikas t-shirt?
No.
Okay.
That's how to end up on a government watch list 101. Yeah, I'm sure
Zach's already on it from this podcast.
I'm sure he is. He is. But folks, we're not going to do any new designs for the remainder of the year. Go out, support those charities, purchase those t-shirts. If not, totally cool. If you don't want to buy the t-shirts, totally understand. But feel free to go and donate to those respective charities directly, which you're more than free and welcome to do. So as always, we appreciate you. Kent, thank you for being such a gracious host and interviewer on this podcast, even though you couldn't see me the entire time.
Why'd you have to tell them?
No, you were doing good.
So good.
This is how bad of a friend I am. Kent hasn't been able to see me this entire time. And neither has Frank. Frank's probably watching it on YouTube. But trying to. Yeah,
I'm trying to. It's very
folks,
difficult.
So real quick tangent. So you guys are used to us broadcasting via another streaming service while we're trying to fancy things up. Frank and I have been working on trying to replicate some of the awesomeness that they got when they took over the podcast. Arguably did a somewhat better job than we do. But we've been trying to fancy it up a little bit, trying to play with some of the same applications and tools they used. And, well, I'm failing miserably. I'm a horrible friend and a bad person. I'll go back underneath the stairs after the show. But in all seriousness, folks, we appreciate you joining for the live chat. tuning in. Again, if you missed the live show, catch us on your favorite podcast player. The last 3 episodes will be uploaded here shortly. Until we see each other again, take care of each other. God bless you all. Get out and shoot. Yeah, beep boop. There you go.
Get out and beep boop.
Get your gigabit on.
Yeah, boy.